There we go. There we go. Really get it. All right. Start off with any announcements.
No.
Wonderful. Any public comments?
Good evening. My name is Keith Larson. I'm the Vice Chair of the Transportation Advisory Group. And I want to give you an update on some things we've been working on to improve and move forward our city for alternate mode transportation. So the last time I shared an email with your group, we were starting to look at some city projects, one of which is the Pebble Pocket Splash Pad the city's looking at. Now, what's unique about that project is they're proposing in the design to have an exclusive cart parking lot. So the question comes up in, well, how are you dimensioning the cart parking spaces? Were you considering ADA accessible cart parking and also bike parking? So the city manager says, well, what do you got as an idea for that? So we've been working in the Transportation Advisory Group on developing a proposal for a uniform cart parking standard, because there are various sub-chapters in the current development ordinance specific to neighborhoods or commercial developments with varying standards. It's not uniform. So what should be the standard? And oh, by the way, there's nothing about ADA accessible cart parking. So I reached out to US Access Board, and guess what they said? Peachtree City, it would be great if you came up with a standard because we don't have one. So Peachtree City could be on the lead front again for alternate mode transportation planning by providing a benchmark to serve other communities as well as our own as we move forward on this question, because we have 20% of our population who are aged. We have at least 6% that are disabled. So we need to consider that. We are on Tuesday night, tomorrow night, we're going to actually look at our ratio of parking for like trade-offs between regular parking spots and carts and as a space and dimension, and then add to that a buffer zone or of accessible route for an ADA accessible parking space. Further to benefit the UDO, talking with the US Access Board, they have a benchmark, it's not a guideline, but a benchmark from another community for electric vehicle charging station accessible parking space. Interesting enough, at the Avenue, if you look at the Tesla parking that's at the Avenue, at the far end towards the Starbucks, there is an accessible parking spot that meets that ADA criteria. So apparently Tesla and whoever their contractors working, they installed and follow that benchmark. But that needs to be something that we would have that the planning staff could provide to the developer on a redevelopment or whatever, so that then they would move forward with something similar. But we need something similar to that for cart charging as well. So we're going to try to get all that together, plus moving forward on bicycle parking. So the city, if you followed some of the city council meetings in May during National Bike Month proclamation, they unveiled the design of a unique Peachtree City bicycle parking rack that will be 30 of them were purchased for installation at city facilities. This is city facility specific. So the city manager asked the Transportation Advisory Group to provide recommendations where to install the first 30, and I'll be very clear on this, the first 30 at city facilities, with maybe possible procurement for additional ones at other city facilities next year. But that leaves the open question of all the commercial developments and multi-use family housing. If you go to Camden, next to Walmart, you'll find 50 bike parked in a lump in the open on a single bike rack. They're just lumped on top of each other. That's not taken care of. So there's a difference between the two, and that's why I wanted to mark. There's short-term parking, like if you're riding your bike with your family to the library for a few hours or to the all kids park or somewhere else. And then there's long-term parking, you live there. And you don't have room in your apartment or your condo to park your bike, so you're looking at a place to park it outside. So that would be some kind of a covered accommodation. That would also be a consideration also for commercial officer OI type of developments where people are bicycle commuting to work. And if you watch the path network today in some of our streets, we have an increasing volume of people that are bike commuting to work. So I think that is an important consideration as we develop all this. Now, all credits and kudos, I know you're following the Fayetteville UDO outline, and they have, as a benchmark, they have some trade-off parking discussions for bike parking, and they also mention golf cart parking, but they're not overly specific or as well developed as I think we need to be because of where we are in our community for developing and promoting active mode. So I'm excited about this opportunity to bring forward to you some of these recommendations as we pull this all together, all these categories of parking with some trade-offs and options and sightings from other communities that have adopted a UDO, including Decatur. That I got their benchmark as well for bike parking. So we can look at, and you can make a concerted, elevated discussion as you decide what to recommend as a quick win or adopt in the final recommendations. So that's all I wanted to provide you with you today, but unless you have some questions for me.
Any questions from the group?
I appreciate the presentations. No questions, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say, really appreciate you coming out and delivering these updates to us. Let's absolutely stay in touch on them. Feel free to share with us as well. I'll try and go to one of the traffic advisory group meetings in the near future. My only question for you really is just to promote the next meeting. You said it's tomorrow night. What time and location?
We're at 6 p.m. downstairs in the community meeting room.
Okay, perfect.
Yep, it's of course it's announced agenda, and if you don't have a chance to go, our cart parking review discussion is in the agenda package. So all the slides are in there with the templates.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Sincerely appreciate you coming in, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, and just like I guess real quick, these are items we've definitely talked about and discussed over the last several years. Having golf cart parking is part of the requirements of any development. You brought up about the charging stations. There's nothing right now in any of the ordinances that actually touches really on charging stations, what they need to look like, where they need to go, things such as that, let alone having any type of ADA compliance with them. And the same thing, I know it's been a while, but I know you brought forward some time ago about the bicycle parking, bicycle storage, things such as that. So I don't know how they tie into what we've kind of talked about is quick wins, because we definitely be looking at it as a larger piece of trying to get it, but it's something if we're able to most definitely.
Right.
But it's something that we know needs to be done. It needs to be put in there, and exactly what it looks like, that's really what we need to figure out. And it's great, whatever information you're able to provide, from other locations. And that was always a question we always asked, well, what are the other folks doing? Because we're not the first ones to run into this. So, let's take the best of the other people and see if it makes sense here. If not, we can modify it. But if they have something that works and it works here, that's great. We're that much further ahead.
Right. Yep. And just to build on something that you mentioned, quick wins. So, obviously there's going to be different levels of a quick win. Like some of them are, we change a word in order to address a discrepancy. Whereas, something like this is much bigger in scope. Of course, we'll talk about that in terms of like the feasibility, in terms of like what we feel is appropriate for the UDO and which one we just will recommend in terms of like a real ordinance for city council to do in the future. Again, much larger conversation, but as Scott was saying, these are things that we were talking about already. Andrew, Chris as well, has been like a very big advocate
Absolutely.
for golf cart parking and things like that. So this is absolutely something that I know as individuals we're really interested in. And again, we'll work with city staff and the UDO process as we get going on this in greater detail in terms of like, how do we move forward with these pieces?
Well,
So-
I think the biggest key is we went through 2 years ago when we discussed together the 54 West Overlay District. And I did the analysis and found out, even though we had an overlay that called for all developments to include bicycle parking, only 7 out of 40 properties had a bicycle rack installed. So that gets back to the follow-up of the city staff, and anytime they pull a permit, oh, well, you didn't do the bike rack, you need to do the bike rack now. Just saying. So now that overlay is approved, that would be a help step in the positive direction of trying to transform our city on an incremental basis, even while we're trying to, what you're doing, the big muscle move to move us forward into the 21st century with the UDO.
Understood?
Thank
Like
you.
it. Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. So our last meeting was on April 14th, 2025. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes?
Yes.
Any changes or additional comments on it?
No.
Perfect. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the minutes for April 14, 2025 have been approved. All right, next, so we have a special guest with us tonight. Really excited to have this individual. It's Fayetteville's Community and Economic Development Director, Mr. David Rast. Really appreciate you coming in tonight and sharing your thoughts in terms of the recent UDO that Fayetteville recently did, which very impressive. We've looked at it a lot and said, if we can have an UDO like at this level, we'll feel really great about it because you guys did a fantastic job on it. And we invited you in this evening, and thank you again for hanging out with us for so long. And just for you to share any thoughts that you have on it, give us an opportunity as well, maybe to ask some questions, and hopefully learn a lot of things in terms of like what you guys did that you found to be particularly helpful. If you found anything that we should avoid doing, we would love to learn about that from you guys rather than our own actions and everything like that. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Good. Thank you very much for having me. And for those of you that were not aware, I spent 20 years in this room as the planning and development director for the city before I went to Fayetteville. But so when I started with Fayetteville, they had gone through a process kind of going back to 2017. City Council had gone through a pretty extensive update, actually the staff as well, of the comprehensive plan. And one of the things that council wanted to promote within the city was the redevelopment of downtown Fayetteville. For many years, development was not a good word in Fayetteville. No was the default to a lot of things. So with kind of the change in guard with the mayor and council, they wanted to try and revitalize the way things were being done, specifically throughout Fayetteville, but specifically within the downtown area. Several of them went to CNU conferences. They did a lot of research about what other communities were doing. And they came back and they hired a consultant that started working on a form-based code for the city. And probably a year and a half into that effort is when I started with the city and started looking at the document and actually went to a couple of the meetings before I was actually started my role there. And it was one of the most confusing documents I've ever looked at as far as planning. And when you're sitting in a meeting with an advisory group and staff and planning and zoning commissioners and city councilors, and the consultant is going over this plan and they just have this blank look on their face, it's not working. And so that was kind of what I walked into when I started with the city. And, you know, after a while, talking with the city manager, talking with the mayor, talking with the planning commission chairman, kind of asked them to step back and reevaluate what it was they wanted to do. And essentially, they knew what they wanted to do, but they weren't going in the right direction. And kind of convinced them of that, and they understood that. So they said, well, what is it? How do we get there? And we started talking about the ordinances that the city had. We talked about how those could be combined, reconfigured, and developed into a UDO, and essentially simplify the development process, not only for developers, but for staff, for applicants, for the public, when they open that document and they want to know what they can do on their property, it's kind of laid out for them. So we spent several months going through, looking at the existing ordinances. We started with the land development ordinances, and like Peachtree City, the ordinances in Fayetteville had not been updated drastically for many years. They worked, and that was kind of the extent of it. So we started kind of dissecting both the zoning ordinance and the land development ordinance that they had in place. And we started laying out, what that process would be if somebody were walking in the door and they were looking at a document. How would you get from knowing the procedures to the zoning, to site development standards, to engineering standards, to building standards? And that's how we kind of divided. We started with the different chapters, which I think I saw on the website you're looking at as well. You're starting with the administrative provisions. Take all the legalese and put it in one chapter. And we work closely with the city attorney and looking at the Georgia zoning procedures law, looking at different standards that the state had adopted, and actually formatted that so all of that legalese was in one chapter. It wasn't in the middle of the document, it wasn't at the end, it was all combined into one chapter. And within that, we laid out the administrative provisions, the quasi-judicial, all the legalese was in there. And so for any application that came in, you could refer to that one section to figure out what the process was. Then we went to the zoning, and one of the things that was very different with the zoning ordinances, the way they were set up in Fayetteville, is there were a lot of them. For commercial, Peachtree City has general commercial, everything's lumped into there. In Fayetteville, there was C1, C2, C3, C4. And you read these ordinances, and they were written where In C4, it permitted everything in C3. And then you started, and then it had uses permitted. Then you looked at C3, and it was everything permitted in C2 with other ordinances. And then it just kind of went down the list. And so when you were looking at, trying to determine what was permitted in certain zoning district, it was everything under the sun. There wasn't any true distinction as far as what uses separated the zoning districts. They were all kind of lumped in together. And then on top of that, everything that was permitted in commercial was permitted in office institutional. So it was just this, it was a mess. And so we started doing deep dives into that. And thank goodness for Excel, because we had all of these spreadsheets and everything was linked together as far as what uses were permitted. And there was so much overlap that we thought, why are we separating our commercial zones into 4 and 5 different districts? Why don't we have lump or combine kind of intense commercial, neighborhood commercial, and things like that. So we just did a lot of charting things out. And one of the things that we did, all of this work, we did it at a staff level. And it was time consuming, but it also, we had a couple staff that had been with the city for several years. We had a couple staff that had just started. So what it did is it helped us all understand the makeup of the zoning, and then working with our steering committee. We had some members on our planning and zoning commission that had been on the commission for 20 years. And then we had some that were brand new. So it really helped, because we had everybody in the same room kind of talking about how we felt, what we felt could improve the process, and how we could implement that into a new ordinance. And we spent that was one of the things that we spent a lot of time doing, was working internally. We had a steering committee which consisted of staff, planning, zoning commission, a couple of members of council, several members from the public. We had developers involved, so it was a kind of a joint effort, bringing everybody together. And good gracious, we didn't always agree, but at the end it was, how can we improve what we have in place? Going back to council and their vision for downtown, and again, 5 members of council, 15 different thoughts on how downtown should develop. So, and we looked at the zoning for downtown, and there was an overlay district that was approximately 900 acres. It was the Main Street Architectural Overlay District. And within those 900 acres, there were 34 different zonings. And there were uses that, for whatever reason, and we always said, it's not wrong that it's there, but do we want to continue that type use in an area where we're trying to encourage walkability and mobility and different types of housings? So we had an opportunity to work with the Atlanta Regional Commission through their LCI study, and we brought in a consultant, or we were selected and brought in a consultant and had them focus on that 900 acres. And the thought is let's take a look at that, look at what is there, how do we identify character areas within that 900 acres, how do we envision that, if it were to be redeveloped, what do we envision that development being, and how do we put ordinances and guidelines in place to guide that? So after, it's probably about a 10 to 12 month process through COVID and everything else, we came up with a plan, and within that 900 acres, we went to council and said, what would you think about rezoning that entire district? And instead of having 34 different zoning districts, we put everything into one zoning, which is our downtown mixed-use district. And within that downtown mixed-use district, we have 8 sub-districts. And they were, it took some convincing, but they liked the concept. So we started looking at how we could implement that while we were protecting the rights of the property owners that were there that had zoning in place. The thought being, what we were doing was enhancing their property values, because we wanted to identify uses that were compatible. And we went as far as building types, building forms, architectural standards. So within each of those sub-districts, there were specific housing types or building types that were permitted. And those building types had, building form, building standards, architectural details. The thought being, as those areas, if they were to redevelop, we would have ordinances in place to guide that. And council was very supportive. We went through the zoning process, we rezoned all of that acreage, and we actually rezoned a significant amount of property throughout the city, where we combined the different commercial districts into neighborhood commercial. There were 1 or 2 other districts, but we kind of went through a pretty extensive rezoning process to clean up a lot of the zoning districts that were in place. So, and this, it didn't occur overnight. This was over a period of a couple years probably. And we adopted the UDO in 2023. One of the things, when you do something that extensive, you're going to find things that you didn't include, or you wish you had included, or you wish you hadn't included. So council's been very amenable to us bringing back amendments and trying to clean up some of those. Nothing significant, but understanding that you're not going to get it 100% right the first time. Another thing that we've done is, so we went through the zoning, all of our environmental ordinances were pretty much in place, but we consolidated those into the land development section, our site development. We updated some of the ordinances in there. Our parking ordinance, we eliminated minimum parking requirements. And the thought being is we didn't want to have just these massive parking lots everywhere. I will say that is something we are probably going to be reconsidering and looking at limiting that to just the downtown mixed use. Outside of that is where we're seeing more, national restaurants and things coming in, and they have to have a minimum number of parking spaces. And again, that's something planning and zoning has been amenable to allow. We do that through a conditional use permit. So we've adopted processes where, something doesn't completely fit within the UDO. We have the conditional use permit, the limited use permit, which allows that flexibility to work with that applicant to allow those to happen. But again, a big thing that we've tried to do throughout the process is just the open communication. We work closely with the developers. We had a couple of developers we were working with while we were working on the UDO, and we actually used them as test cases as we were working through some of the, specifically within the downtown mixed use district, some of the districts within there, looking at uses, looking at building types and things like that. And so that was successful. I think overall, one of the things we tried to do was just simplify the structure of the document. And that to me is key, because when you're looking in one section for the zoning, and then you're having to look in another section for site design standards, and look over here for parking, and you're going to miss things, and it doesn't really, the ordinance doesn't gel that way. So that's one of the things we tried to do, was just structure the UDO so that it was easy to follow. We updated our sign ordinance. We'd found some literature. There's actually an attorney who had gone through our sign ordinance several years ago and made suggestions that were never incorporated into the ordinance. So we kind of went back and restudied those. But again, just had, used a lot of listening sessions. One of the things that I tell people that I thought was kind of funny, when you have a group of people and you're going through uses and you're trying to get their feedback, you're going to get, it can extend the process with comments. So we did kind of a speed dating thing. We had a red sign and a green sign, and we'd go through and, what do you think about this? All right, what do you think about this? And it turned a pretty grueling process into something more enjoyable. And I think for the most part, they appreciated just doing something a little different.
Understood. Sorry, one moment real quick. Sorry to interrupt.
That's fine.
I know you have to head out right now, right? I wanted to give you a chance to see if you had any questions, comments before you had to head out.
I am so sorry. I have a flight I have to catch. But I have thoroughly enjoyed your presentation. And I think you've offered several things for us to consider and think about as we move forward. And I appreciate very much you coming to join us.
Well, good. I think the big thing is just make it fun. I mean, it's a pain, but just, make it fun. And if you're trying to get feedback from the community, feedback from developers, citizens, you come up with a process where they want to participate.
Understood. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, sorry, continue on from, if, anything else you wanted to add on?
Well, I'm kind of going off the wonderful questions you sent me, but
Oh, wonderful.
and I think part of it, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I'm not saying that the Fayetteville's UDO is all it, but one of the things I did, or we did, is we pulled UDOs from a lot of different communities, and more so for formatting. You can't really copy a zoning ordinance from a jurisdiction that's not where you are. You can look at how they developed it, you can look at the process, you can look at how they formatted the document. And that was one of the big things we did with the library we built. And it was looking at UDOs from Georgia. I mean, there's some great examples around the country. And I'll be happy to share those because it's, other people have done this. It's been successful. But one of the things one of the consistencies that I saw is just the simplicity of, using graphics, using charts, using tables, and that was one of the things we incorporated into more so the zoning in our UDO, but in several other sections, but just simple graphics, and I think that's a key, and that's kind of what people will relate to as they're going through the document. We have a couple next steps that we're working on that are on the long list of other things we're working on, but one of those was actually kind of a supplement to the UDO, a development guidebook, which took those details to the next level. You mentioned fencing or something. When you tell somebody that their fence, say, has to be 5 feet from the property line, they don't know what that means. You show them a graphic or show them an image of that, and that helps them understand that. So those are some of the things that are on our list to work on. It's kind of a supplemental document.
Understood.
So I could go on, but that's
No, we appreciate everything you've shared so far. But yeah, you're welcome to share any other major highlights that you think would be important for us to know.
one of the things on my reflections that one of the things that we have, I won't say struggled with, but just the technical skills. When if you're writing this at a staff level, or if you're working with a consultant, whatever how that final document is presented to you. I learned InDesign, which I'm not computer literate at all, and that was one of the things because we wanted to include a lot of graphics. Well, that's way outside of my expertise. And then we switched to a publisher software. So I think that is, because we're doing all of the edits and updates in-house. So that, unless you have somebody on staff who's very comfortable with that, or if you're going to be using a consultant to update, just make sure that it's in a format that, you know, you're comfortable with. And that is probably has been the most frustrating things is, you know, seeing all these wonderful documents and images, and then learning how to create that, which again is not my, it's not what I'm good at.
Understood. I mean, learning InDesign still, that's good.
What's that?
Learning InDesign's impressive. So yeah.
Well,
that's good.
yes, and, but it also consumed just a lot of time.
Understood.
But, again, the big thing I think is we were fortunate that our council was very much in support of the UDO moving in that direction. Coming in, being the new guy, and convincing them that what they'd been working on and paying a consultant to work on for 12 to 14 months was not the way to go, was not easy. But I think they realize that, and especially after showing them examples of, or listening to what it was they wanted to do, and showing them examples of how that could be achieved without the complexities of, form-based code. And I think one of the first meetings, this is Fayetteville. I mean, this isn't, a big city. You want to have something where, the citizen can understand this, a developer can understand that. We're not, form-based isn't something you use in a community like this. So they weren't happy, but they got it.
Understood.
Yeah. So, but whatever we can do to help, I'll be glad to share, my library or links to the different UDOs that we looked at. Our arsenal is what I called it.
We'll absolutely take you up on
That's
that.
always
Yes.
great information to have.
Yes. I'll open it up to questions. Scott, do you have any initial questions?
No, I don't have anything specific. David, I really appreciate you coming this evening.
You're welcome.
Just excellent information, and as I've always said, it's always good hearing and seeing what other people have done. And as you said, it may not be a hey, here's a plug and play from somewhere else, whether it's Fayetteville's or Decatur's or somewhere else in the country, but it may open up our eyes and say, you know what, that's something we didn't think about, or that's something we have, and they just kind of have it a little bit better, sort of thing. And that's where I always look to see and take those things from. I did the same thing as architectural control chairman on my HOA, is I got the same information from multiple locations in the city, neighborhoods, and said, okay, what do they have that we don't, or vice versa, sort of thing, and try to come up with the best document we could.
Right.
And I think that's important. So, thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. And I think one of the things, unless there have been significant changes, I think the zoning in Peachtree City is pretty much in good shape. But it's how do you simplify, if you're looking, for something, how do you simplify the process of knowing what you can do
Right.
on your property? And I say it's in good shape because when I started with Fayetteville, it was, in my mind, was much more complex than it needed to be when you were going between 4 and 5 ordinances to find out what was and was not permitted.
Right. City staff, do you guys have any questions, comments?
I don't know if we have any questions. I know that for me, first, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Oh,
It's
you're
been a
welcome.
pleasure talking with you up until now. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So I know for us, I think trying to be great stewards of the file and ensuring that, you know, pushing out a action that has good translations, kind of making sure that we're not kind of doing anything outside of the code. We're just wondering what was the step of staff? I know you kind of identified your roles, but there was a consultant involved, but did your staff draft any parts of it, or like, I guess, what was the exact role of your staff? I'm just wondering that.
We drafted the entire
Oh,
document.
oh, wow.
Yeah. So we took, and a lot of that was taking the ordinances that were already in place and then organizing those the way we felt they needed to be. But if you've looked online, that everything was done in-house.
Got it.
Now,
Okay.
we did, there were at least 2 points in the process where we worked with a consultant to do a peer review. So we would send them what we had, and they would comment on that. But the document itself, we generated that in-house.
Great job.
Well, thank you.
Agreed. Any other questions? Laura? You
But
good?
there are good consultants out there that do that work, I will
Yes,
say that.
yes.
So
I mean, I know that the only thing I've ever drafted on my own is a comp plan. I can tell you a zoning ordinance is, whoa, right? It's looking at several sections. It's confirming if there's conflicts. It's knowing where to go, how to go, whether the translations are or the wording is best. I've drafted a number of text amendments, but not to a full document myself. Of course,
Right.
I've done consulting, or I've had a consultant to come in that assists staff, but to know that the entire staff has done that, that is kudos to you all. That is a great document to have and have under your belt. So thank you for sharing that
No, thank
with us. But I will
Great.
take you up on your offer reaching out to you. Yes.
And you may hear from us as well.
Not a problem.
I'm gonna go ahead and say, yeah, probably. Thank you again.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
appreciate your time and all this great information. I'm sure you'll hear from us again in the near future. And again, any additional information, again, your library or anything like that, we'll gladly take.
All right, you want me to send it to you or to,
You can send it to me. I don't mind
all right.
sharing.
Yep, yep,
very good.
cool. Thank you again.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
David.
Rath.
All right.
If you don't mind, I'm gonna, you got
Oh, go ahead. It's
Safe
yeah.
travels.
Try to avoid the heavy rain.
Yeah, I think it was definitely happening.
It was definitely.
Yeah. I think you may.
May have missed it now.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, committee business. So we're going to focus on the first point. We're probably going to have to postpone that second part, being that
Fortunately,
there's,
not having a quorum at this point.
yeah, the fact
Yeah.
there's two of us up here is going to be a little awkward to vote for vice chair. But we'll focus on the first one. So on April 17th, oh no, it's May 15th.
It's May,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry. On May 15th, we went in front of City Council just to give a very high-level overview of how the first 6 months of the UDO has been going. I'm not going to go through every one of these slides, but I'm just going to talk about it in general. You know, we gave a very quick recap, starting off with like when we first initially started with our primary team members. Obviously, that's a very different list now, and establishing again, you know, the support team members, which has been fairly consistent with where we've been. Reminded them again that we received approval for this steering committee to begin in November of 2024, and really just recapped again, we've been able to accomplish some really fundamental things like our mission statement, our goal, and our objectives from that. And also the fact that, we've done some other things that are public facing, like establishing a website. We have our first kind of quick win for an ordinance perspective completed as well, or in the works, I should say. The first draft, which is very messy, admittedly, at least it exists and, is very detailed with this kind of eye chart images right there. And then again, a lot of what we have planned next, which we can go ahead and start talking about maybe some of these things right here. Identifying the first round of all existing zoning, land use, site development, et cetera, all those documents. Obviously we've been talking about that within these meetings. We've been having one-off conversations about those as well. We recognize that that's going to continue to be a process to find those things. We have time until, really that first draft of the UDO is done, which I'll talk about more in a moment. Recruiting experts and consultants, we'll talk about that in a moment. And learn from Fayetteville's UDO process to adopt best practices. I mean, that's a big check mark that we just accomplished right there. The initial draft of the UDO, again, will begin this month in terms of trying to piece some of those parts together. We'll talk about that next steps wise, probably a combination of conversations that we have with city staff. We'll keep all of those things up to date in Microsoft Teams as well, so that way there's a written record that's accessible to us and the public as well in terms of where we go with those. And then going from there, finalizing the additional identifications of it and creating the first draft from there. And then finalizing the UDO, that's very much in the future, but we'll do that for the next year and change from there, which will be the big project. Then we just wrapped up the conversation from there. City staff overall, I believe, City Council overall, I believe, was incredibly supportive of all the work that we've been doing. Really appreciate them putting their trust in us and their support on this. There's a lot more to come. We heard obviously the tale of Fayetteville on that, which again, they obviously put a lot of work into this. And I think something that I really picked up from Mr. Rask was saying that, it's not going to be perfect. They're still obviously having conversations around these things. And we've somewhat, again, I'll just show this real quick. Our timeline ends in December 2026 for this, when we sort of hand it over from there. Maybe that's something we want to talk about in terms of like, what about the cleanup? That's undoubtedly going to have to happen at some point, but we'll talk about that more in the future from there. But I thought that was a particularly really interesting thing that he said, which is that when you think it's over, it's not really over from that. Again, I think that was really good overall. But going back to the presentation again, really thanks City Council for inviting us. We do need to schedule a follow-up with them, which will probably be in the winter, November, December. For that, we can talk about, ideally, hopefully for that meeting, we can talk about like what we learned from Fayetteville to, here's the very ugly first draft of what a UDO could potentially look like for us, and additional details from there. Threw out a whole bunch of stuff really quickly. Any questions, comments on anything that I just said?
So I don't know where on the agenda we'll talk about some of those things that you say we'll talk about tonight, but if I can just kind of jump in, because I don't see it, some of this is, well,
Right.
one or two maybe on there. But I would love to, and I guess I can wait. Let me wait until we get to the expert and consultants piece, but I'll wait until then.
Yeah, we'll go through the general task updates and then we'll just
Okay.
open it up from
Okay.
there. Okay, providing an update on the creation of the email address.
Yep, so the, I don't know if it's IT director, but I forget his title. But he has shared with us, there's an existing email address for the planning commission to date today.
Okay.
And so he would like that we just continue to use that email address since that email address exists already. The only challenge with that is that, of course, that kind of presents that piece where there's that conflicting piece, but we'll have to, if we did it, it'd be the same way, where the email wouldn't go directly to you all, because the way that the city receives emails is that we're knowing that when we receive these emails, they're protected based on a certain level of security measures. He doesn't feel comfortable with emails coming in from the outside being sent directly to yours because it could be a virus that we're sharing into your email.
That's fair.
So if we were to create a second one, he's saying that it would have to be where Laura and I are receiving it and we forward the file over to you once. It's kind of like we're kind of that gate confirming that the virus isn't there to forward it over to you. So going back to that point that to avoid any conflicts, it'd probably be best to call it a UDO email versus there being a planning commission email.
Yeah, that would,
I agree.
I agree. Creating a separate one, I mean, first of all, this isn't the planning commission, so
Right.
that
Right.
separation's important right
Correct.
there.
Correct.
And we've received email from the city council or the planning commission piece, which seems pretty consistent. If memory serves me right, where it goes to city staff first, and then it's forwarded on to us from there.
Yeah, we're like a filter, so that kind of helps in
Right.
a way.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
I think that process has worked very well
Okay.
for the time that I've been on the planning commission, and I'd be open to that.
Okay.
Perfect.
Awesome.
What's the turnaround time for something like that?
So I can speak with him because he did bring it up to me on Friday, this discussion. I will tell you that we did not render it to be separated for those two boards and committees to be separated. Now that he knows that, he can easily create an email in the same day. So we'll just kind of
Beautiful.
follow up with him on tomorrow. Laura, just to kind of follow up, I think that piece of them being separated should be necessary. So we'll just follow up with Zach on tomorrow to create that as two separate, to have the same exact process as the planning commission email has, going directly to the two of us.
That would be great. And then the addition, just add it to the website as
Okay.
well from there, and then
Awesome.
we'll be good to go.
Yep. Good.
Wonderful. All right. Any other questions on comments on that piece?
No, sir.
All right. Discuss recruitment process for determining planning experts and consultants. Given what we just heard, but
So-
go ahead.
If I can kind of just give some thoughts on this. So as staff, I think Laura and I, we want to be as available and as instrumental as possible, right? I think one of the challenges, if I can speak on behalf of us, is that we're not certain as to what's needed and expected from us other than here are files and let's kind of just share them with the group. So I think, because I want to be as available to you, as productive to you as possible. So I guess my question would be, are we in fact moving towards there being an expert in the direction of drafting the file? Because if that's the case, we can prepare all those things to get us there. Because what's happening now is we're kind of sitting on the side and just waiting to see what's next, right?
Right.
And warrantably so, because we're kind of still figuring out the pieces and getting things together. So I think once we identify, is it going to be the planning commission that does the work that he has mentioned that his staff has done? I will say on behalf of myself and my team here, we will not be able to draft a file of that caliber with the level of work that we have on our table today. So it would have to be either the planning commission or an expert that we hire as a consultant that you all serve as a review or guiding body, or just a group that tells them what that marching order may be. And staff serves in that end of saying, as users of the file, we find that there's definitely a grand need to have this file more modern day. One point that he made that I can confirm, my last employer had a UDO. It changes the world for a planner to be able to go into a file that's easily able to translate, to read, to understand, and even share and communicate that to a resident. I love the fact that he mentioned tables. My last UDO was amazingly created with tables, illustrations, you name it. It made my life easy as a planner because it wasn't as if I was teaching the code. I was just going to the sections of the code. So that's one thing I can say that we as staff would love to be able to say what's going to help us be grander. Laura does plan review all day, well, majority of the day. Okay.
If there's time.
So this file being more illustrative and just kind of explaining it in a way that's, a lot of times the challenge could be just the translation takes a lot longer than it should. Because, drafters of the code may have wanted to be a little bit more technical and probably should not have been. It just kind of just made it simplified. So, again, I think an expert is necessary because I will tell you that Laura and I, nor the planning tech or the zoning tech that we have the capacity in regards to time. Expertise maybe, but not time.
not surprised at all to hear that.
Okay.
You know, and as we've been talking about the UDO process, you know, we've never, I'll speak for Scott as well, we've never imagined that we would throw it to you guys.
Well, I'm happy you said that
no.
because
Yeah.
it wasn't said first. I
Right.
think we
No, it was
wondered
it was
if you
never
thought that.
It was not my expectation to say,
No.
hey, we're going to do this. We're volunteering for this, and oh, by the way, it's your job to do it. That
No.
was
Well,
never.
thank you for
And to be more direct, that mid-May conversation with City Council, we did specifically say that you know, we would like to have a consultant to help with with the actual writing of it, where the steering committee can then help oversee it, and of course, city staff can be involved in that process as well. So we have been direct in terms of saying like what we would want out of a consultant out of that. Now, in the past, when the first UDO committee was doing this, I think that there was an expectation that the consultant would do more than that. For example, we're talking about doing public presentations and open houses, for lack of a better term. It's 9 p.m. My words are not going to be good from here on out. But you know, the idea is that that consultant was going to ideally do everything. And you know, we're talking about taking on some of those type of responsibilities, which I think the steering committee, we can absolutely help with those components on it. And the expectation is not for you guys to put together an open house for us or anything like that.
But that's fine. I think
but-
that's still something we could definitely be a part of in helping.
Right. You know, what I'm ultimately getting at is that the steering committee and city staff, we're in partnership on this. We also, like you guys, we flat out don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to put together a UDO the same way that Mr. Rass was talking about it a moment ago. And again, we went to city council and set expectations that a consultant would be fantastic to put together the actual details of all this. And they did, if memory serves me right, they did say that they may have some funds available.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So this is the part where I guess wanting direction on that. So there's a process to encumber funds. Of course, you know, the budget ends October 1st is when it starts. So it ends the end of September, starts October 1st. We kind of need to have that conversation so that we can make sure that those funds are saved to be able to use in the future. So I would like to know maybe possibly today or so that I can then move forward with having conversations with the city manager so that we can go in that direction if that's the case.
City manager in the May meeting was saying that there was money, again, set aside, but that money was not, at least it's my understanding in mid-May, was not specific to, like it wasn't in like a lockbox that said this money is only for the consultant. I believe that some money has been used for other projects that would have gone to the consultant in the first round of the UDO. So there may be funds. I can't speak to it, and again, the city manager would be able to speak to it a
Right,
lot
that's
more.
why I'm wondering, if, I guess I'm getting clearance that, yes, we're moving with it. Okay, so
Yes,
let me
yes,
do
yes.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, so
100%.
I understand that now,
Yes.
so I will go forward for that direction.
Sounds good. And let us know what we can do to support you in those conversations and all that. But
And I believe they were, it's not really a general fund is not the term, but they were placed in there, and I think the way the city manager said that, you know, some of the money, since it goes into a large pool, you know, may have been used, but that allotment, you know, is quote unquote still available if needed. It might just have to come
Understood.
from a couple different things, but it's there.
well put. That's much better than
Great.
what I did. Yes. But no, that's what I took away from it as well.
Understood.
And I think, you know, I deal almost on a daily basis with requirements management for aerospace and things such as that. I mean, I've written manuals and developed different things like that. And, you know, I have a pretty good idea of what it takes to go ahead and do that. And yeah, I am amazed that David and his team were able to do that on their own. You know, to really pull that together, because I know what I have to do, you know, to develop things, and it's not that it wouldn't be possible. We would just go ahead and have to extend the length of this process by years,
Yeah.
to be honest, and that's not what we need.
Right.
You know, we need something in a finite amount of time that's going to be able to be used. And I think you bring a good point up, and David brought it also. You know, I always try to write in and I don't want to say a certain level, but as in simple terms as possible, so that everyone can understand it. even dealing it from a technical side. So I think that that's important. Hopefully, the consultant has done something like this, would be able to take that down. And again, same thing, using illustrations, graphics, tables,
Right.
charts.
It's
It is amazing when
amazing.
you say,
Yes.
and David said, hey, it's a 5-foot setback. Okay, well, show
what
me.
does that look like?
Here's a beautiful illustration that shows exactly what you're trying to say. And the words are still there, but now you actually have a graphic example that somebody
Agreed.
can look and say, okay, I understand that.
Agreed.
So, and hopefully, like I said, somebody in the consulting side would be able to help out with that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just to recap this point, unless there's anything else, any comments, questions on it? Just to recap it, we believe there may be some money. We'll talk to Justin. You guys can talk to the city manager about it, get his opinions on it, and then ideally we can move forward sometime soon on that piece. And it's okay if this is the answer to this is no, but do we have like a list or anything like that of potential consultants that we could go to?
Okay, so yes, when we have RFPs that are submitted out, we have always listed different companies that have this type of expertise. I will tell you that I have a list that I have, used for various different documents, probably a list of 10 plus Georgia-based
Great.
companies that have handled comp plans or zoning ordinances. So yes, but we also put it out to everyone, right?
Right.
But we give those who we know are in the field of the work so that we don't miss that particular group of people. We send out those emails. Our procurement director or manager does that.
Okay. And do we have a list of criteria that we could potentially use for selection?
So the RFP will do that. It will
Okay.
identify,
That makes
what, yeah. So I will tell you, I don't believe in reinventing the wheel. Other cities have done these things. They have the opportunity where you can basically borrow some language or even add to that language that what our intents may be. Again, we're all going in this process in local government of doing UDO, so it's been done before. It's not new. So,
Understood.
yep,
Okay. Well, let us know what we can do to help.
absolutely. Thank you.
Those are the major agenda items. I'll just open it up just for final questions, comments, and all that. But we can use this time for comments in terms of like what else we have coming up. Again, this is just it's phase one, which again, we've talked a lot about pulling together the additional documents from your end, but you still have some time on that in terms of like the finalizing the list. That's not until August. So just know that there's still additional time on that. And again, let us know what we can do to help on that if there's anything.
So you want electronic or you want hard copies? Like, what are your thoughts when you say compile?
Ideally, again, we have the shared folders on our Microsoft Teams drive, which again is our source of truth for all communications and documents. I'm envisioning that as ideally we just put all the electronic stuff in there because again, it can always be printed out and repurposed from there.
Got it. So for the record, these files you're referencing are those that are on the website currently that we're just basically downloading as individual files. And in addition to downloading as individual files, what I will do to add to that, I'll give you those page numbers. So you'll know by section, this section is 200 pages, this section is 100 pages. That way you can kind of glance at it to see what it's looking like
Right.
by slice as well as by the whole pie.
Know as well, as you guys are pulling that together, I'll go and volunteer myself, and I won't volunteer you
Thank you.
for it. But I'll come in and like sit down with
Okay.
you guys and help organize these
That's
things as
awesome.
well. So just let me know what we can do for it, because I would love to meet the August deadline for this.
We will.
Wonderful.
will.
Okay, perfect. We'll talk about quick wins another day. I think again we have the low hanging fruit of like the spreadsheets where it's like here's the discrepancies and things like that. Ideally, those are quick wins, but the whole ordinances and new stuff as well, which would go in front of City Council, which Mr. Larson talks about as well from the Traffic Advisory Group. We'll talk about that in the future. We got time. Anything else you want to talk about? That's it for phase two.
I think so.
All right. I will say this, for phase three, again, we still have some times that we need to come up for some of these things. Again, would love to nail down a time in November for city council. I think there's only one city council meeting that happens
Yes.
that month, and it's going to be in the morning. So
I don't-
because
yeah.
because Thanksgiving is going to take over. we'll talk about that from it maybe late October. I don't know,
Okay, that'll
something
work.
like that.
Okay.
And then as well, and this is something that Councilman Holland brought up, is calling out that we had 2 rounds. Well, we said in at least 2 rounds of public education sessions, but we should work together in terms of what those dates are and if there should be more than 2 on that, because we're definitely open to it. Everything else I think is good for right now. Some of these are just going to be very big things that we'll deal with in the future. All right. Any other questions, comments?
No, I think that now that we are clear as to what the next steps will be, I will first have the conversation with Justin about the RFP component as well as the budgeted amount. Either way, we're in the process of creating our budget now, so
Okay.
moving forward, we'll be able to kind of just have that discussion, whether it be now or later. Secondly, I can say that we'll continue to work on the files that you're mentioning to ensure that we're downloading them on the server, as well as identifying the different sections and pieces. We will meet that August deadline. I don't think there's anything else pending on our side other than those 2 pieces regarding the consultant and the and the email address. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's
we'll
it.
finalize that and we should be good to go.
Wonderful.
Do you have anything, Laura?
Wonderful. How you guys feeling? You feeling good about this?
I do. I'm excited. Laura and I have daily conversations about the ordinance. And it's going to be a good opportunity for us to be able to communicate better to residents and other property owners, commercial, industrial, because we want to ensure that we're providing the best level of service and being fair across the board. So when it's illustrated like this and easy to get to like this, it makes it so that they're getting the same best level of service possible.
Wonderful. Great.
Yep.
Well, do we have a motion to adjourn?